And all of this, of course, predicated on a stunning move that has made the prime time breaking news this evening. US President Donald Trump announcing a 50% tariff on Indian exports to the United States, the highest tariffs imposed on any country in Asia. Trump has accused India of fueling the Russian war machine, a direct reference to India's decision to continue importing discounted Russian crude oil despite Western sanctions. And now that foreign policy has been met with what can only be described as an economic punishment from Washington. But India has stood its ground, Delhi says. Trump's tariff decision is unreasonable and unjustified. India has also promised it will act and take all necessary actions to protect its national interests.
The US decision to impose 50% tariffs on India would come as a shock at certain levels. But the key question is whether the 21-day period which exists before this is actually implemented is going to be a period within which there is some compromise, some negotiation which happens between both sides. Remember, it's not so much the issue of tariffs which India and the United States were negotiating which is troubling New Delhi. It's the additional sanctions of 25% because of India's continued import of Russian oil that New Delhi would deem completely unacceptable. We're a large country. We've stated this repeatedly. We have energy requirements and there are incredible double standards, which was made clear in the last statement of the External Affairs Ministry. Double standards why? The US continues to import key items from Russia. Europe depends to a large extent, or significant extent I should mention, for its energy requirements on Russia. Therefore, why is this double standard as far as India is concerned? But the relationship between India and the US is still too large. It's a very, very deep strategic relationship. And I think that there is the expectation that nothing in terms of the broader relationship is going to be put away, no matter how much of a crisis this may be. And I use that word deliberately. It is a bit of a crisis as far as the overall relationship is concerned. What I do believe this will result in is a significant trust deficit between Washington and New Delhi developing. Delhi would never have expected America to do something like this. There was always a sense that despite differences, they were working towards a trade deal. But all of a sudden, this entire oil import situation comes in. New Delhi has stated our position very, very clearly. There are clear double standards which exist between the West and India on this issue. And if you've got a partner as important as the United States imposing sanctions at 50% equal to Brazil upon India, possibly the highest sanctions in Asia, then that's deeply problematic indeed. In Haifa, with Xavier Thomas, Vishnu Shom for NDTV.
Well, it was threatened and now it's happened. An additional 25% duty placed on India, all because of buying Russian energy. It now means that one of the United States' major allies and one of its major trading partners will have a total duty of 50% placed on goods that are leaving India and entering here, the United States. Already there was that 25% base rate placed on India. That was set last week by the US president. But Donald Trump had also warned that any country buying Russian energy would face an additional penalty. We've known about that for the last couple of weeks, but those threats against India have increased during the course of this week. And now all of it has come to pass with this announcement from the White House. And all of it follows US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff's meetings this Wednesday in Moscow with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, the aim of that meeting was to try and achieve a ceasefire in Russia's war in Ukraine. The US president had given Vladimir Putin a deadline of this Friday to achieve a ceasefire. No ceasefire for Russia would have mean Donald Trump imposing a 100% tariff on Russia. But he'd also warned that there would be secondary tariffs or penalties put in place against any country that was buying Russian energy. And remember, India buys both Russian energy and military equipment, both of which have angered Donald Trump. He has said that he has now received, in theory from Steve Witkoff, what he calls additional information. That information being that the government of India is currently directly or indirectly importing Russian Federation oil. Donald Trump says that this additional 25% penalty will come into effect 21 days after the date of this order that has just been published, so 3 weeks from now. Of course, all of this calls into question the nature of the US-India relationship, not just when it comes to trade. The two countries are considered strong allies. They have security partnerships. including the Quad grouping with Japan and Australia, all of that aimed at trying to push back against China's dominance. And remember, Prime Minister Modi was here in Washington just a few months ago, back in February, one of the first leaders to visit the White House when Donald Trump returned to the Oval Office. These latest actions, though, from the US president make it unclear when another sit-down meeting may happen between the two leaders, these tariffs really becoming a barrier to close relations anytime soon. Nick Harper, NDTV, Washington.